We've been looking at setting up core servers for Active Directory, domain controllers, Exchange, and email server. We're going to look at setting up a core file server. And so there's several ways we can manage a core file server with a GUI, but primarily we also want to be sure we're familiar with PowerShell. The PowerShell method. That way we can manage our file shares and our NTFS permissions, the access control entries on the discretionary access control list on the server itself or in a remote shell. It's just nice when you're dealing with core servers to know the path for everything. So we're going to focus on that, and we're on a Windows 10 management client. And I'm just going to run ICE as an administrator. And I have some commands I have already typed out and tested the syntax on to save time. And in other videos, we've gone through all these commands slowly and meticulously. So if there's some that you're confused about, I'm not going to repeat what I did in previous videos and this video, but if you need to go back, check some of the previous videos that we did on Active Directory commandlets, file sharing and setting up permissions and folders and things like that. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is some things in AD, and I've already imported the Active Directory module, but if I hadn't, I'd need to do that, right? So I want to create an organizational unit, and I'm going to use the commandlet new AD organizational unit, and I'm just going to call it share GSGs 1, and here's the LDAP path, the lightweight directory access protocol path. So I'm going to run the selection, and that created that OU in AD, okay? Now, these next two commands I'm going to run right here are to create a global security group. I'm going to use the commandlet new AD group, and I'm going to call it share silent intelligence assets read write. And the SAM account is the same, and you could name the description and the display name something totally different than the SAM account name if you wanted to. But I try to keep it all the same just to simplify things. It makes things less confusing. The only exception is I'll prefix it with the keyword share. You don't have to, but actually my boss did that at work, and he kind of got me used to that. It's convenient because when you're looking for global security groups or GSGs that have to do with file shares, you can just open up ADUC or ADAC and type in share and list all your GSGs that deal with file shares. So it's pretty convenient. So it's up to you. You don't have to, but I generally try to stay consistent with the SAM account name when I create a GSG in Posh and PowerShell, and that way it's not so confusing. Otherwise, if I had a different alias and name and display name and description for every single global security group, it could get very confusing if they didn't have something in common, if I didn't have a method to my madness, so to speak. You see what I'm saying? So this global security group will be for the purpose of assigning read-write access on a folder once we get to that point where we're creating the folder. And the method we're following, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Microsoft used to recommend years ago AGU DLP. You take users, you add them to a domain local group, or a global group, global security group, and then a universal group, and then a domain local group, and then you assign that as an access control entry to the DACL of a folder, okay? That was their AGU DLP thing, but basically to simplify that, we can further simplify that. We can just simply say the way you really want to do this in Active Directory, for every shared file, every shared folder that you create on a file server, create a global security group. And my usual method of operation, my MO, I'm going to create one GSG global security group for read-write and another GSG global security group for read-only access. And you can get even more granular than that in your permissions, but generally that satisfies most needs and requirements. Some users need read-write, which means modify. Other users need read-only, which means read and execute. So that's what I'm doing. One's going to be called Silent Intelligence Assets read-write and Equestria Personnel read-write. I'm going to create those groups, and then I'm going to add members using add AD group member, right? And that just uses the LDAP string to the group I created and the OU that I created it. and then the users that I want to add. In this case, this is their SAM account name from Active Directory. Okay, so I'm going to run it. Let's make our groups and our new OU. And I'm just right-clicking and doing run selection to save time rather than typing all this out. I've done dozens of videos where we've gone through things slowly and meticulously, so I'm going to try to go a little bit faster from here on out to save time, and hopefully so you won't get so bored. But remember, I'm always going to put the source code and comment tags beneath the video or in the description, so you can copy and paste the source code into ICE and run it yourself if you want in your own test environment. I'm going to add users. All right, so I added the users, in this case to Cylon Intelligence Assets and Equestria Personnel Data read-write. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing down here, but whereas I was using these groups for read-write access, I'm going to use these groups for read-only access. Okay, so I'm going to run the code to create those two more GSGs, right? Run selection. Okay, no errors, looks good. And I'm going to add my group members in. All right. So we just added Rosalind, Commander Adama, Leoben. They're read-only to Cylon Intelligence Assets, and for Equestria Personnel Data read-only, we've added Applejack, Pinkie Pie, and Rarity. Okay. So that's our AD stuff. Taking care of our AD stuff. And if we hop over to our domain controller, let's take a look. So on my domain controller, if I open up Active Directory Users and Computers, or ADUC, in this case, here's the organizational unit that we created, share_GSGs_1. And these are the 4 global security groups that we created, right? And for the read-write, here are the members that we added in PowerShell. And for the read-only, here are the members that we added in PowerShell. So just taking a look at that, that's what we've done. All right, back on our Windows 10 management client. So for our next part, we need to connect in a remote PowerShell session to our file server. In this case, I'm using an email server, an Exchange server. Now, I would never do this in a production environment. You want a dedicated file server. You would never want to take an email server or something like a domain controller and also use it as a file server. But this is just a simple test environment. So for reasons of economy, I'm going to allow my email server to double as a file server because there's no real demand on it as far as sharing files. We're just using it as an example to run some PowerShell to create shares and permissions and folders and things. But yes, in production, you would of course never want to do this on an email server. You'd want a dedicated server with really good fast storage and enough resources. So anyway, to create a POSH session, a remote PowerShell session, to my server, my file server, in this case mail 2019 core-01, I would do enter PS session mail 2019 core-01. Now notice my command prompt changes. See down here? All right, so that lets me know that I'm connected now to that server. And I'm going to change directory and just give us a little bit more screen real estate there and look at, so here's what I currently have. And just ignore those Clannad anime photographs there of Nagisa and Tomoya, and I can't help it. I'm a big sappy anime fan. The more romantic tragedy, the more tragic, the more romantic, the more sappy it is, the more I love the animes. Clannad and Canon and Your Lie in April. Oh my gosh, I wasn't right for weeks after I watched the end of that. Your Lie in April, and let's not forget Forest of Piano and all. Well, anyway, okay, back to the subject. Squirrel. So let's go ahead and create our directories. Let me pull this down so we have a little more, we can see our code a little more. All right, so to do that, now that I'm remotely connected to my file server, I can run this PowerShell. All right, and this is a core server, so there's no GUI on it. So I could sign into the server itself, but if I did, I'd still be running the same commands I'm running in ICE right here. Understand? So that's why it's important to know the PowerShell when dealing with core server. All right, so new item type directory, and here's the path. All right, so I want to create a parent folder called Cylon Intelligence Assets, and then also directories. I'm going to create 2 child folders, hybrids and sleeper agents. So let's go ahead and do that. run the selection. And we have created that, and if I list the directory contents, here it is, Silent Intelligence Assets, and if I dir silent from here, and there, you can see my two child folders, right? And let's back out to the root level. All right, so now I've created a parent and two child directories using new item. Now I'm going to create a file, right? This was type directory, item type directory. Now it's item type file. So new items are a very versatile commandlet. You can create files and folders with it. And I'm going to call it hybriddata.txt, and I'm going to create it in the child folder, hybrids, okay? I set up a string here. This has all happened before. What is, once was, what was, will be again, okay? And that's just something, if you were a BSG fan, Battlestar Galactica, the hybrid silence always said that. And it was actually ecclesiastical from Ecclesiastes in the Bible. King Solomon said, what is, once was, and what was, will be again. There's nothing new under the sun. So they essentially took that fascinatingly from Ecclesiastes in the Bible. And that's probably more trivia than you wanted to know, but anyway, if you were a BSG fan, that's something that the hybrids always said, and it's true because apparently that universe was a simulation, and you know, everything had happened repetitively multiple times over and over and over again, the same way. Anyway, back to the point. All right, so we have a string, and then we're going to use set content. We're going to target that file that we created in that child folder of that parent folder. With a value, we're going to write the text that's in message there, okay? So let's do that. And run selection. Okay, everything looks good. And now I'm going to create another parent folder, Equestria Data, and make two more child folders, Unicorn Magic and Pegasus Patterns. Okay, and let's do that. Okay, and now I'm going to create two more files in child folders. So in the Unicorn Magic child folder, I'm going to make a text file, Twilight's Enhancements. I didn't mean to do that. Drag the mouse and instead of highlighted. Twilight's _ enchantments.txt, and we're going to take this string. Friendship is magic, be a lover, not a fighter. Friendship is forever, unconditional love. Now, isn't that exactly what Twilight Sparkle would say? She's kind of like the Jesus of My Little Pony. Friendship is magic. She is just the pony of love. Anyway, all right, so let's go ahead and set the value of that string, in this case, to I lost my place here, to Twilight enchantments.txt. Sorry, excuse me, right here. And then we're going to create another text file in the other child folder, Pegasus Patterns, called Pegasus Moves Text. And the message will be Rainbow Dash Top Secret Signature Moves Sonic Rain Boom. And again, I'm going to use set content and set the value of that message, okay? So let's see, we made our folders, and let's go ahead and make our files right now. All right, so now we've made our files, and I'm going to pull this up. We're just going to check on some things. Let's look at our directories. So let me go into Cylon. We'll wildcard it. Here's our two child folders, hybrids and sleeper agents, and silent intelligence assets. I'm going to go into hybrids, and in hybrids there's hybrid data.txt, and if I cat it, and I'll just wildcard it, and there it is. This has all happened before. What is, once was, what was, will be again. And this just gives us some objects to test out our different permissions on when we start using PowerShell to set the access control entries on the discretionary access control lists of different permissions of local files in the file system, and also of network share permissions or Samba permissions. I'm going to recurse back, and I'm back in the parent folder, and I'm going to go into sleeper agents, and okay, so everything looks good there. I can't remember whether or not we created a text file there or not. Back at the root level, I'm going to go into the parent folder, Equestria Data, and There's Pegasus patterns and Unicorn Magic. Let's go to Pegasus patterns, and here is our Pegasus moves data file, right? Our text file. So we're going to cat it, and rainbow dash top secret signature move sonic rain boom. All right, so good. So we have some data there that we can set permissions on. And let's go into Unicorn Magic. And in Unicorn Magic, let's the Twilight's enchantments document. Friendship is magic. Be a lover, not a fighter. Friendship is forever. Unconditional love. Yes, thank you, Twilight. Thank you for that beautiful wisdom, and we will try and follow it. Okay. Next, we want to set some NTFS permissions. So A says on a DACL, and we also want to change ownership. And I'm just going to show you by default. If I were to show you by default, I'm just going to run these 2 lines of code, and you can see that the built-in administrators group is by default the owner of any folders that I create. Okay, because I'm logged in as Starbuck, but she's a member of built-in administrators and a domain admin. So the administrators group is the default owner of those assets, in this case of those directories, files, folders that I create. If I want to change ownership, I follow the same pattern, whether I'm changing access control entries on the ACL or whether I'm changing ownership. You'll notice the same pattern. So first you want to build a new object with the properties that you desire. In this case, the new owner. And Starbuck is not a local user. She's an Active Directory domain user. So I have to include the domain / and then her SAM account name, Starbuck. So battlestars / Starbuck. All right, so I'm building a new owner object, and it's of type system.security.principal.nt account. Then you'll notice the same basic pattern no matter what you do when it comes to manipulating permissions, ownership, and so forth with access control list. And that is, first I have to use getACL to get the access control list properties of the directories that I want to manipulate or modify. So I do that. I use getACL, and I get the properties of the silent intelligence assets and Equestria data, and I store it in these 2 arrays. Looks like a normal variable, but if you think about it, these are actually arrays because they're storing an entire collection of properties that gets returned by getACL from these 2 directories. So once I have that and I've stored it, then I can use it to call a function or method to set a property. I could change the ownership or change permission on something. So I do that. I use setOwner. I pass in my new owner object, who's Starbuck, right? That goes in as an argument, as a parameter. Remember that video we did on functions and parameters. And then I need to take my arrays that point to my folders, and I have to use setACL and write those changes back to the discretionary access control list, the DACL, for each of those directories. Okay? So you'll notice the same basic process no matter what you do when you're manipulating ACL data. And you always have to write it back. If you don't, you will lose those changes. Okay? So again, by default, it's built-in administrators. But watch what happens when I run these lines of code here. Run the selection. And now I'm going to run this line of code here, getACL, and I'm going to get the owner attribute of silent intelligent assets and Equestria data. So if I run these lines of code again, now look, whereas before the owner was built-in administrators, now the owner is Active Directory Starbuck. Okay? Okay. So you'll notice a similar process here. Remember those 2 global security groups we created for read-write access? Well, now we're going to use them to assign read-write permission for these folders, okay? To do that, I need, once again, to get the access control list properties on the folders. I'm doing that here and here, right, with getACL, assigning it to ACL1 and ACL2 respectively. I need to create a new permissions object. So here, I'm using an Active Directory global security group, the one we created above. And I did not mean to drag that. But, all right, so Silent Intelligence Assets Read Write. And I'm assigning modify and synchronize because I want them to be able to write to files, delete files, read from files, list files, all of those things, okay? It's full read-write access. Additionally, I'm propagating inheritance with container inherit and object inherit. And I'm implicitly allowing instead of explicitly denying. You can explicitly deny, but you want to avoid that when you can, because remember, when you do, explicit deny overrides anything. So essentially it breaks your inheritance hierarchy. Now there are some situations where that's what you want, where you have a weird permissions type situation and you want to break inheritance and it needs to be super paranoid secure, so you might explicitly deny something. But that should be rare. That is the exception to the rule and not the generalization that you should follow. Okay? So in that case, here's my new permissions object. Look, I'm doing the same thing down here, right? I'm creating a new permissions object. Only whereas this one was Silent Intelligence Assets RW, this is Equestria Personnel Data RW. Same thing, modify and synchronize because it's read-write. Same thing, propagate the inheritance. Same thing, allow, and it is implicit rather than explicit. Okay? Want it to work with inheritance. Next, now that I have the ACL properties and I have the new permissions stored in an object in an array, I can call new object and build a new object. And I'm going to assign this to access rule 1, and I'm going to instantiate a new system, security, access control, file system access rule. And the argument list is going to be what I defined above in all those permissions. Okay? Then when I have all that, these 3 lines, then I can call the method set access rule and set it on access rule 1. I pass that in as a parameter, as an argument. You see? I'm doing the same thing down here, right? Set access rule. But this time I'm passing in here, access rule 2. So that goes in as an argument. And then remember, when you're done, once you've modified anything, ownership, permissions, yada, 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 you have to set it back on the ACL. If you don't, all your changes are lost. So it might seem a bit reflexive or redundant, but in the same way that I get ACL to start, I have to always set ACL to end. And so I take, once again, my array holding all those properties, now with the new access rule that I applied using set access rule, and I have to set ACL and apply it back to Silent Intelligence Assets. Okay? So let's run these lines of code to set permissions for read-write access. And we're all done. That was read-write. Now what about read-only? It's the same basic process. So to save time, I won't go over it. The only difference is, look, I'm using different global security groups. These are the 2 groups, not for read-write, but for read-only that we created before. And the permissions are different. Rather than modify, now it's read and execute and synchronize, okay? But we're still propagating inheritance forward, and it's still implicit and allow, okay? Same method, same argument, our parameter that we pass in, right? That's the new access rule. And then when we're done, we have to apply it back to the directory, okay? So let's do that. I'm going to run this code right here. Okay. And now this is a method I wrote to simply get the permissions and display them once we've made these changes. So this will give us the access control entries on the DACL, the discretionary access control list, and show us what's going on there. It's going to clear the screen, print a line, sets the target to the directory, permissions for the target. It's going to call get ACL to get all of the ACL properties, store them in message, and we're going to narrow it down to identity, reference, and file system rights. There's a lot more we could pull from the ACL, but these are the only 2 attributes we're interested in to pull from the ACL. And then I'm going to plug this array into a for loop, cycle through it, the number of elements, and as we iterate, we're just going to display the ID and the rights and the ACE number, okay? And ACE number, ID, rights. And we're doing the same thing for the other folder. We're just doing the same thing down here, okay? So let's run this block of code, which will clear the console and give us the access control entries. Okay? And now you can see. So for intelligence, Silent Intelligence Assets, We have our read-write group with modify and synchronize. We have our read-only group with read, execute, and synchronize. And then these are all built in, okay? With every folder we create, built in is going to have users. And Starbuck, in this instance, is always going to have full control because she's the owner. As the owner, she gets full control by default. Same thing down here, right? Read-write has modify, synchronize. Read-only has read, execute, synchronize. And we have all of our built-in groups here working with inheritance, okay? And normally, this is what you would always want. You would not want to break inheritance. When you combine share level and file level permissions, the most restrictive combination is what you actually get. In other words, if I had full control via share permissions, but I only had read-only via NTFS or DACL permissions, I would only have read-only. I would have to have full control or modify permissions, writable permissions on both the share level permissions and also on the local NTFS or DACL permissions in order to effectively modify or write to the contents of a folder. So just remember, it's always the most restrictive of the combination. So no matter how much allow you have, if you are missing write or modify in either the NTFS, the file folder level permissions or the share permissions, then essentially you only have read-only because it's the most restrictive combination. Likewise, if you were explicitly denied permission because of your membership in some group, then it wouldn't matter. Inheritance would not work in your favor. You would simply be denied permission. And that can be useful. Let's say that you have a user who's a problem user. Maybe you have to explicitly deny something on that user account to sort of, maybe sort of protect them from themselves or keep them from doing harmful things on the network. So it's explicitly denying something. It's something that you might use seldomly or once in a blue moon, but you should never make a regular practice out of it because it would make your inheritance hierarchy a mess. Okay? But to illustrate that, I'm going to, just to, I guess, make a point, I'm going to make two shares, right? Right now, no shares exist. And if I went to, let's go to mail one, 2019 core 01, I think. Did I get the host name right? I guess not. Is it mail 2019 core -01 mail 2019? Oh. Extra one there, 201. Okay. All right. So by default, this is a share that Exchange set up, but we don't have any other shares here, right? So I'm going to create two shares, but you would normally never do this because if I do this, anybody who's a domain user gets those permissions. So normally what I would do if I wanted to be more secure, rather than just letting anybody access this share, I would set it to my read write and my read only. And you could add more than one share permission. So I could do that. And then I could add a SAMBA share permission and add my read only after I did full access to both my read RW and RO groups, global security groups. I would normally never double negative, okay. I would normally never add domain users because that's not something I want every single person in Active Directory to be able to access, right? But just to show you, I guess the exception to the rule, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to add domain users to my share, which would give every user the ability to access those shares. But then we're going to go and we're going to remove inherited permissions for these guys. Just to show you what that would look like, okay? So it's not a best practice, not what you want to do, but I'm just going to show you what that would look like. So let's run these. All right. So now we've created these shares. And now if I go over here and I refresh, look, there those shares are. And Starbuck, well, she's got full access, right? Remember, she's the owner. So she can do anything she wants to in here. She can add stuff to files and she could do all kind of things if she wanted to. Okay. And Equestria data, Twilight enhancements. Starbuck was here. All right, there you go. All right, so she's owner, and she has full access to those shares. Okay, so let's go modify these permissions just to kind of, hopefully illustrate the point. If I want to, remove inheritance or break inheritance, which I would normally never want to do, but I can do that with set access rule protection. Okay. And to break inheritance, this argument would be true, this argument would be false. And if I wanted to turn inheritance back on, I just flip the bits. So then this Boolean would become false and this would become true. Understand? All right, let me show you what I'm talking about. See all these built-in permissions here? And see all these built-in permissions here, right? We didn't explicitly add this. They're built in. All right, I'm going to run this command. We're going to break inheritance on those two directories. Let me make sure I called it the right name. Equestria data. Yeah, okay. Called it the right name. We're going to break inheritance. All right. So we just broke inheritance on those directories. Now look, I'm going to come back up here and run this code again that we wrote to show us the access control entries in the DACL. Now watch what that looks like. Look, all those built-in permissions are gone. And Starbuck, even though she's an owner, she ain't got no permission. Oh no, what's she gonna do? Starbuck. Okay. Now, a lot of times when you change permissions on a folder or file, you have to sign out and sign back in as a user and renew your access token to reflect the changes in those permissions. Not always, but usually. I always tell my end users when I make a permission change, they don't have to reboot their computer, but they need to sign out, and log back in to renew their access token, which will then, recalculate the permissions, the access control entries on the DACL for all the folders and things. They have shares and things like that. But let's see if these changes were in any way effective without us signing out. Oh, well, there we go. Starbuck didn't have to sign out. See, now she can't read those folders because she's not in those groups. I'd have to sign in as a user or a member of one of those groups, okay? And if I wanted to add inheritance back, let me go here and we'll set that to false and that Boolean to true, false, true. All right, so we flip the bits, like flipping the script, flipping the bits. Boolean there, and then now if we go run the code to look at the DACL and our ACEs again, look, there's our built-in permissions again. We have inheritance, yay! Look at Starbuck, she's a winner, she's got full control again, yay! But does she have to sign out? Nope, okay, good. Well, make a liar out of me. Anyway, sometimes that is the case in AD. When you make permission changes, I'd recommend you tell your users to sign out and sign back in. But in this case, looks like it made a liar out of me. It's always an exception. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove that, and we're gonna take a look at. We're gonna sign out and sign in as a user of both the read-only and the read-write, and we'll test some basic permissions. But again, not best practice, not what I want you to do, but just to show you, I'm going to once again remove inheritance. All right, we're going to flip the bits, change our Boolean arguments here, and break it again. All right, so we broke it again. And let's come up here and check. All right, so now look at our permissions here, right? All right, so read-only, the read-only GSG only has read, execute, synchronize, and the read-write has modify, synchronize. The read-write, something modify, synchronize, read-only, read, execute, and synchronize. So let's try the read-only group first, and let's pick a user who was a member of one of those. So let's see, up here for read-write, who did we add into our read-write GSG? We got 6 and Boomer. How about Boomer? She was one of my favorite characters from BSG. And read write, we've got Spark T, Twilight Sparkle, for the Equestria personnel data. So for Cylons, let's sign in as Boomer. So now let's sign in as Boomer. Remember, she was a part of the read-write global security group. So we're going to go to mail 1 219 core 01. I have a sticky keyboard. All right, so we have a couple of folders here. Now let's try to access Equestria data. All right, and that's good. By design, she should not have any access to that folder, so it blocks her. Now let's go in. Now we can go into Cylon Intelligence Assets, Hybrids, Hybrid Data. Boomer was here. All right. So inheritance-wise, she has permission on the parent folder and any of the child folder objects inside of Cylon Intelligence Assets, but she has no permission at all on Equestria data. And so that's what we want. Remember, it's the most restrictive combination of permissions. So even though all domain users, I set it up so that if it were only share level permissions that Active Directory were concerned with on our file server, then it would just let Boomer right on in to Equestria data, because any domain user, right? Any user in AD is a part of domain users, is an entry on the share permission list. But on the DACL for NTFS permissions, the local file permissions and folder permissions, no. So it's the most restrictive combination. Even though she's allowed share permission-wise, she is not allowed to see Equestria data NTFS or file permission-wise. And now let's sign in as Applejack. Remember, Applejack was a member of not a read-write, but a read-only global security group. And that was for the Equestria data folder, but not the Cylon data folder. So she should have no access whatsoever to the Cylon data folder, and she should have read-only access. Be able to read, but not be able to change or modify the contents of the Equestria data folder. So let's check out her level of access and her permissions. And we'll go to our mail server again, mail 2019 core 01. All right, and we'll try to go to Cylon Intelligence, and that's good. She should have absolutely no permission on Cylon Intelligence Assets, so she's blocked. What about Equestria data? Okay, so she can go into Equestria data, but what if she tries to create a file? And it tells her, nope, you need permission to. That's good, as it should be, right? Because Applejack has read-only permission, not modify, not read-write. Can she go into a child folder? Why, yes, she can. But can she create a text file? No. In this case, see, inheritance blocks her from creating a file. She can open a file and she can read it, but can she change it? So if I tried to save this, Applejack was here. And it tells me I do not have permission to open this file. So we're just verifying that's good, right? The members of our global security group that's read-only, we want them to be able to read the data, but we do not want them to be able to change it, write to it, delete it, modify it in any way. This is just a read-only security group that she's a member of, right? It's read-only permission for Applejack. Now we're signed back in as Starbuck, right? Our domain admin. And once again, on my Windows 10 Management Workstation, I'm going to run ICE as an administrator. And I'm going to open another set of commands I've scripted out. And this time we're going to create another organizational unit in AD. Okay, I'm going to run new AD organization unit. This time it'll make shared GSGs too. I'm going to make 2 more read-write groups, and I'm going to call these research and development and accounting. So we had a little bit of fun with our last example, but we'll be more business-like with this example. Okay. And I'm going to add these users to my read-write groups. In this case, the same users to both read-write groups. Okay. And I'm going to make my read-only groups down here. With new AD group, I'm going to add my group members here, right? Run selection. And now I'm going to do, in this case, a special exception. Now we're going to get a bit more granular in the way we set up permissions. What if I have a user? I want that user to be able to go into a parent folder, but I only want them to be able to access one of the child folders in that inheritance hierarchy in that folder. And I don't want them to be able to access other folders and things. Oh, annoying. So in this case, we can do that, all right? We can do that, but we have to get a bit more granular, and we have to use some special permissions. And so I've created the read-write and the read-only groups. Now I'm going to make something called root-only. And this is just for the purpose of being able to traverse or go into that parent folder, but will not, by inheritance, give the user who's a member of this group any permission on the child folders, unless we explicitly add them. It's rare, but there are situations where you might want to do this. So I'm going to make my 2 root-only groups, and I'm going to add users. Now we're using Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. All right. So I've created all of those in Active Directory. And if I were to hop over to my domain controller, and let me do a refresh. I may have to open and close ADOC. All right, there we go. So now you can see here's my 2 GSGs, and here are my share groups, okay, in those GSGs. All right, so now I need to connect to the server to remotely create some directories. So I'm going to go enter PS session and connect to mail 2019 Core 01. Again, notice my prompt changes, right? Now I have a remote shell connection to that server. Okay, so let's go down, and we're going to create accounting as a parent folder and receivable and payable as child folders. We're good there. And we're going to create a file and put some text into it. Good there. And now we're going to make research and development. And we're going to make some child folders: top secret, R&D data, high risk, high yield, obscure projects, interns, and trainees. So a lot of child folders in that parent folder there. Okay, all done. Much faster than typing all this stuff in the command prompt. You could argue I did have to type this out in Posh before I started making the video, but at least this way we can move faster, and I can do it again as many times as I want to without having to repetitively type the same thing over and over. So it is a big labor saver and a big time saver using ICE and PowerShell and saving things in script format, right? Okay, with those child folders created, I'm going to make a couple of more text files: secretprojects.txt inside of top secret, and newbie manual inside of trainees. Okay, and I'll write some simple text: secret project data and newbie. All right, so we've run that. So we've created the parent folders, the child folders, the files and things. Okay, and once again, let's check the ownership by default and see what it is. By default, the owner's built-in administrators, right? Whenever I first make a folder. But if I change it, and I won't go over it because we went over it in detail last time, so I'm going to go faster now. I'm going to run the code to change ownership. Boom, change my ownership. Let's see who owns those folders. And now it's Starbuck, just like before, right? Okie dokes. Just like before, I'm going to set read write, and it's going to have modify and synchronize permissions just like before. Same technique. I'm going to go faster now. I'm not going to slow down because we went slow and went over this in detail last time, right? So I'm going to run this. That sets my read write permission on the folder. Now I'm going to set read only. These are the additional two global security groups we created for read only permission. And I'm going to set my permission there. Okay, so read write and read only permission set. Now here's the special permissions. Okay, special permissions. This is the parent folder only access permissions, and it's going to use the traverse folder and list folder, which is read data, execute file, and synchronize. Okay, so this is a bit different, but only in this part. Instead of modify or read data execute, it's just read data, execute file, and synchronize. Read data, execute file, and synchronize. And the idea behind this special permission, we're getting a little more granular. We want to let the user get into the parent folder, but not see the child folders unless we explicitly add them to the DACL of a child folder. So let's run that. And now we've set our special permissions, right? Our traverse folder and list folder permissions on the parent. Now, unless I explicitly set permissions for that group on one of the child folders, they can get in the parent, but they won't be able to see anything in the child folders. So to explicitly give permission to receivable and interns, okay, I'm going to explicitly set that. And in this case, it's going to be on the root only, and here I'm just going to do read only permission to go into those folders, okay? So this is on the special permissions, the root only. And that was for read only. Now I'm going to do some read write access on a different folder. In this case, this was on receivable under accounting and interns under research and development. Now I'm going to do the trainees child folder and research and development. And the permissions I'm going to set are modify. So this will have writable permission. Propagate inheritance downward, implicit. Okay. Let's set that. All right. Now we can remove inheritance again, but let's take a look at the DACLs of those two objects first. Remember the code we wrote previously to show us all the access control entries? Went over it in detail before, so I'm not going to repeat it. I'm going to move faster now. All right. So look, here are the three groups that we added. All right. And they have permission set to modify, read only, and this is our special traverse folder and list folder permission, right? Same thing down here, right? Read, write, read only, root only. There's three. And then we have all of our built-in permissions, right? Okay, so let's now break, let's break inheritance on these users, and let's add one more group here. Let's see, we will do on a subfolder. Let's do it on a subdirectory. I'm trying to remember what I was playing with down here. What was I playing with last night? All right, full control. And this is going to be on interns. And only if a user is a member of that group. And we have to add that user to be a group or to be a member of that group. So yet another GSG we would make. And this time we would add Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, and so forth. Okay. All right, let's do that first. Oops. All right, let me exit the PS session there. And let's go ahead and make this group. All right, and add the members in. And I need to connect back to mail 1. Go back to the root directory to get some screen real estate there. And let's add our permissions in. All right. Now let's take a look at the DACL for these two directories, okay? All right. So on the parent folders, here's our 3 groups, and we have our built-in groups, but on the child folder, we added that for, we added that last most granular group for interns, right? The R&D interns read writable. R&D interns read writable. So we would have to actually get the DACL on that. And interns. Okay. And so look, here's root only, traverse folder, list folder, contents, and then full control for R&D interns read writable, but that's only on the child folder, not the parent folders. And then the rest of these, yeah, by inheritance, they get access, okay? Got it? All right. And so we added the users that we added to our group here, Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto. So that's our special permission for interns, right? To give them full permission on the interns folder, okay? Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto. But also the special permission up here, in this case, read access to subdirectories. Let me go here. Yeah, the parent folder only access, okay? And let's remove inheritance. I'm going to remove inheritance. Okay. And now if we go back and we display the DACL for those 2 folders, all right, so all of our built-in permissions are now gone. All right. So let's see, let's make sure that our members for root only, we have Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto. So we need a user who's a member of both the root only that can traverse the parent folder, right? Traverse through the parent folder. So we have Naruto, he's a member. And also we need that user to also be a member of the GSG that has the special permissions on the subfolder. In this case, research and development and interns. And that group was also Naruto. So let's make him our test user, okay? We'll sign in as him and we'll test access. Now let's sign in as Naruto. And we'll check our special, weird, more granular permissions that we should almost never or very seldomly use, but once in a blue moon, it might be just what the situation calls for. And I'm going to go to my shares on my file server. And here they are. And let's just check out all these folders and see what kind of permission we have. So on Equestria data, Naruto has nothing. That's good by design. Research and development. Oh, shut up. Stop bugging me. All right, let's start over. Equestria data, nothing. Accounting. We can traverse the parent folder, and we can only go into receivable. And we can't read anything. We are not propagating inheritance, so only something that he was explicitly granted permission to could Naruto read in this folder. And he can't get in this child folder at all. All right, so that gives us, but he can make it through the parent folder. All right, he can traverse it, but that's it. Like he couldn't even try to make anything. If you try to make a text document, nope, can't do that. Go to this child folder, nope, can't do that. You can only go to this child folder, and you can only open a file to which he was explicitly granted permission for. So that is definitely a bit more complicated, but if you have a special situation that calls for it, you can get a lot more granular with your permissions by combining share and NTFS permissions. That's accounting. What about silent intelligence assets? None at all. What about research and development? Let's try to go in. We can get into the parent folder, and we have no ability to create files that are good. What if we try to get into this child folder, high risk, high yield? Not allowed. What if we try to get into interns? We can, because in this case, we're part of that special group we created that gave permissions for that. If you don't stop warning me, Windows, I swear I'm gonna. All right. But that's read only. Interns is read only. Okay. What about obscure projects? Nope, because we only gave him the root only permission, right, to traverse and list folder contents in the parent folder, and then we created a whole other global security group, which he's a member of, that only has a member on certain of these child folders. So R&D data, no. Top secret, no. And what about trainees? All right. And he can open the newbie manual. Naruto is here. And I will be Hokage. I can't even spell Hokage. All right. And notice he has write permission. He even has write permission on that child folder, okay? But no permission on this child folder, no permission on this child folder, no permission on this child folder, read only permission on this child folder, and no permission on this child folder, but he can traverse and list the parent folder. So I'm just trying to show you all the combinations, all the things that you can do with permissions using PowerShell. So we're logged back in as domain admin Starbuck, and we've opened ICE once again in administrative mode. And I've worked out some code here, so let's go ahead and we're going to make a third OU to store our global security groups in an Active Directory. And we're going to make two new global security groups, in this case for read-write access. So read-write access, we're going to add users to our group. So to Hidden Leaf Jujutsu Secrets, we're going to add Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. And to One Piece Treasure Maps, we're going to add Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro. Now that we've created the groups, let's add the users. That was our read-write. Down here, we've got some read-only groups we're going to create. Again, for Hidden Leaf Jujutsu Secrets read-only and One Piece Treasure Maps read-only. We'll run that code, create the global security groups. We're going to add our group members. So to Hidden Leaf Jujutsu Secrets read-only, we'll add Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Hinata. And to One Piece Treasure Maps read-only, we'll add Nami, Usopp, and Robin. Okay. All right. So with that being done in AD, we now need to connect to our file server, which will be enter PS session mail 2019 core-01. And let me actually run that. If I can actually highlight the code. There. All right. So notice our command prompt changes. And now we're connected to our file server. Okay. So let's go down to the file part. And now we're going to make a parent folder, Hidden Leaf Jujutsu Secrets, and we're going to make some child folders, Top Secret Hokage Ninjutsu and Tuning Exams. Okay. So we made our folds and our parent folder and child folders there. Now let's make a file, ninjutsus.txt. We're going to put it in Top Secret Hokage Ninjutsu, right, in the child folder. And the message, we're going to write some data to it. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Sharingan Jutsus, Kakashi Copy Ninjutsus, whatever. I'm just going to write it to that file, ninjutsus.txt, just to give us something to manipulate, to set permissions on. Then we're going to create a parent folder, One Piece Treasure Maps, and two child folders, Unicorn Magic and Pegasus Patterns. And I should have, that was for MLP actually, it doesn't make much sense, but I'll go ahead and create those child folders and the parent folder, what the heck. And sunny skies today, fair, not dare, should be fair weather, and a huge chance for adventure. All right, so we're going to create in the Going Merry. Well, looks like here I did change it to the Going Merry and Treasure Maps. So let's go ahead and make those child folders there. Maps. The Going Merry and Maps. Let's make these two child folders here. I'm going to do that. I already have the parent folder there. The Going Merry and Maps. All right. So now we have a Going Merry child folder. And we have a treasure maps, and I said maps. So let's change that to maps. One Piece Treasure Maps, One Piece Treasure Maps. Maps, okay. One Piece Treasure Maps. And I already, all right. And let's go ahead and make this file here. All right. So we wrote our text, sunny skies today, fair weather, and a huge chance for adventure. In the Going Merry child folder. And in the Maps child folder, we created treasuremaps.txt, and we said, this be the way that leads to the One Piece. Make ye king of the pirates, it will. Yar. Or something like that, right? Again, we're going to change the owner to Starbuck and look at the default ownership. Right? It's built-in administrators, always built-in administrators. We change the ownership. And now look at it. Now it's Battlestars and Starbuck, right? Okay. So let's create, let's set the access control entries with our GSGs for read, write. If I changed all the names, I don't know if I changed all the names here because I was doing a lot of copying and pasting from my last project. But all right, good. And read-only access, let's set the ACLs. And again, I'll put all the source code and comment tags under the video so you guys can copy and paste it into ICE and run it. Now let's look at the default permission entries, the ACEs on the DACL. What does that look like now? All right. So you can see on Hidden Leaf Jujutsu Secrets, here are the two, the read write and the read only folders that we added with modify and read execute and synchronize. And on One Piece Treasure Maps, here's the read write and the read only. Again, modify, read execute, and you can see all the built-in permissions, right? Starbucks owner, so she has full control. There's always the built-in users and so forth. Okie dokes. And we can create the shares. And this time, instead of domain users, if we wanted to make this more secure, we could first create a share in this line of code, okay? All right. So in this case, we've created Hidden Leaf Jujutsu Secrets will be the name of the share. It's going to share out this parent folder. It's going to provide full access, but only if they're in the member Hidden Leaf Jujutsu Secrets. So what about the read-only group? That's the read-write, but what about the read-only? Well, we can add an additional share permission. And this is more secure than just adding domain users. So I could add hidden leaf Jiu-Jitsu secrets and account name. In this case, it's an AD account, right? And it's going to be my hidden leaf Jiu-Jitsu secrets read only. And instead of full access like it was here, it's going to be read only. And first, because I don't want it to confirm, prompt me and ask for confirmation and blah, blah, blah. But notice the commandlet's different. It's grant Samba share access instead of new Samba. We've already created the share. We've already had a full access to the read write. But now we have to add an additional share permission that's read only, specified as read. All right. So now we run that command, and look, it creates those two permissions. So here's my read write group, full, and here's my read only, read. So I set this at both the DACL, the NTFS permission level, and the share level. So it's a bit more secure, a bit more explicit that way. And not just any domain user could see or access those shares. All right, I'm going to run this now and create another share, in this case with full access for the read write one piece treasure maps group. And now that it's created, I can grant Samba share access and add another share permission that's read only right here to my read only GSG. Okay. And if I were to list of permissions, I'm going to run this little line of code here. Get Samba share access. And in the same way that get ACL gets the DACL local file permission, now you can see my share permissions, right? So here's all my share permissions: one piece treasure maps, read only read, and read write full. See? And hidden leaf. Let's look at the hidden leaf. Hidden leaf Jiu-Jitsu secrets read only has read, and the hidden leaf Jiu-Jitsu secrets that's read write. I should have put read write there, but it has full there. Okay. All right. And if we were to just see how that looks in a file share, let's go take a look at all of our shared directories now. Okay, and here are all of our shared directories on our file server via PowerShell. Now this is a script that's just combining everything, okay? And I have several functions in this script, but the only one we're going to run is create S-drive share. The others I use for looking at share and access control into your NTFS permissions, but we're going to clear the screen. We've got some variables up here, so we don't have to hard code. So the file server name, the domain, the LDAP path, global security group we're going to create. In this case, what do I want to call it? I'm going to call it Equestria Citizenship Documents, because why not? Description: requested by Twilight Sparkle to share information on behalf of Princess Lester for sharing information concerning the Grand Gala. Okay. Going to add 6 users. In this case, that's the 6 main characters to My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, MLP Fem. And notice what's different this time. Instead of the absolute path C:\\, I have to use a UNC path. So / the server name. I'm going to use the hidden administrative share, if I can say that right, with the $ symbol, and then the name, okay? And the name being up here, Equestria Citizenship Documents, okay? I'm going to display some information here. I add a lot of extra output in for verbosity's sake, and a lot of people, you may not like verbosity. I love verbosity. I think it's a programmer's friend, a scripter's friend, because when something goes wrong, you can track it down. If you save it to a log or output it to the console, then you know exactly what your script did or what it didn't do, and you can undo it. It makes it easier to fix it if you break something. Also for non-repudiation. Sometimes in an environment where you have a lot of people working on different projects, somebody might think you did something and you didn't, and it's nice to be able to produce some hard data and say, well, look, here's what I did, here's what my script did, here's what my script didn't do. So documentation is your friend. Verbosity is your friend in that regard, in both regards. Anyway, that's all that's doing, just displaying folder name, GSG, UNC path. I create the group, new AD group, just like we did before, right? Only here, I'm going to pause 5 seconds to allow that data to replicate to other domain controllers, because I don't want to add the members too quick. If I create the group on one domain controller and I happen to connect to another domain controller and that group hasn't replicated and I try to add users, I'll have problems. So that's just a sort of a strategic pause here. It's going to sleep, no new lines, just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Add members to the group. So that here we're going to add one by one, and we built an array up here, right? Here's our FEM 6 main characters, MLP FEM. And here in a for loop, we're going to go through element by element and add them to the group using add AD group member. Okay. Then we need to create the folder. Only this time, remember, we're using a UNC path rather than an absolute path because we are working out of a local shell. We're not connected in a remote shell to the file server. So we have to use the UNC path this time. Then we're going to add an access control entry. In this case, it's going to be modify, and we're going to propagate inheritance forward. It's going to be implicit and allow. Okay? Similar to what we've done before. Nothing new there, really. Just a variation on the theme, so to speak. Going to add the ACE for the GST to the folder DACL. All right, so we're going to get, all of these parameters here. This is an array actually stored in ACE. We're going to get it. We're going to go through. We're going to display all the parameters so we can see what we're adding. Just extra verbosity, making it more explicit so we can see what we're doing. If we have to undo it or fix it or break it or whatever, it makes it easier on us. That's just more documentation. All right, here we're going to get ACL. We're going to get the access control entries on that object, the shared folder object, store it here. We're going to set access rule, our new access rule, which comes from our ACE that we created up here, right? And remember, we always have to call set ACL and set it back, or we will lose those changes. Gathering up information now, Active Directory group details, more verbosity to help us debug, and more verbosity. And then the members, we're just going to go through and list all the members. That's just more verbosity. The DACL, we're going to show the path, the owner, the group, and so forth. Getting the access control list data, more verbosity. In here, we need to do this a little bit differently than we did before because again, we're in a native PowerShell on our Windows 10 workstation. We're not in a remote shell right here. See down here? See, we're not on our file server. So because of that, I have to do a new sim session, computer name, the server name. That's mailed 2019 core-01. And then I'll create my new Samba share with this data using sim session. Because this is different because it's a remote share, okay? So that's why you see the different option there, the sim session parameter. And then when I'm done, I just want to clean up, remove the sim session. That session was a connection to the server, okay? So I tried to make this quick. I didn't want to waste too much of your time, but are we ready to see it run now? Let's watch it run. So we're just going to run this function right here. And let's see what it does. And I'll put all the source code and comments under the video so you can copy and paste it into ICE and tweak it and use it if you want. All right, we create the GSG, waiting 5 seconds to replicate to other domain controllers. Then we add the users to the GSG. Let me scroll back up here so we can see the output. The verbosity, the incredible verbosity. All right, so we create the GSG, we wait for it to replicate. We add all the members in. Twilight Sparkle, Rainbow Dash, Fluttershy, Applejack, Rarity, and Pinkie Pie. We create the folder, all right? And I've numbered these, see, in my verbosity and my output. We create the folder, here's the UNC path. Using that administrative share, right? The hidden administrative share, C $symbol, Equestria Citizenship Documents, okay? Here's what we have created, the monster we have created. Haha, okay? And just a little bit more feedback, and we're gonna add access control entry, GSG folder, the DACL. Here's what we're adding, all right? The group, the permission modify, propagating inheritance forward, and implicit allow. Gathering more information, more verbosity, more logging, more documentation, Active Directory group details, global security group, it's called shares Equestria Citizenship Documents read write, created on 10/06/9/27. I really don't have a life. Description, requested by Twilight Sparkle to share information. Notes, I like strawberries and bananas. I don't know why I just put that in there, but the members of shares Equestria Citizenship, we're just verifying, right? We added them up here. we've verbosely put that out as we added each one. We're just checking. There they are, right? There's the 6 main characters to MLP FIM. DACL for the directory, let's get the path. Here's the UNC path, right? So it's on the mail1 server, C:, using that administrative share, and Equestria _citizenship _documents. Owner built-in administrators, group, battle stars, and domain users, okay? ACL folder permissions for UNC mail, all right? So let's look and see. Well, here's our custom global security group with modify and synchronize, right? And then the rest of these are just the normal built-in groups propagated through inheritance, okay? And finally, our path, C, Equestria citizenship documents, our GSG, and just additional data. You know, in this case, we're pulling the share data. Okay, all done.